We'll start with City High. City and Liberty played on Friday night. Neither one of us was at that game. We were at that game with Pat Hardy, but we weren't at that game. But I listened to it on the radio, and it sounded like a tale of two halves. It sounded like City High dominated the first half, and to Liberty's credit, and I've seen this, in the several years now that I've been back around high school football, kind of expect that from Liberty High. It's not a team that's going to roll over and die for you. But let's focus a little bit on City High. It's got Ottumwa this weekend, a winless Ottumwa team, and the winner of that game gets West High the following Friday. I guess share your thoughts on what transpired at Bates Field on Friday, Ryan, and then beyond that, what do you see for City? What's the outlook for City High going into these playoffs?
These teams, we talked about this last week. These teams, and they're creating a great rivalry, Rob.
Right.
Because these games have just been incredible. Like, you have two games now the last 2 years between two, you can call them crosstown, I guess we'll call North Liberty and Iowa. In the same metro area, these teams, they know each other. And last year it was a field goal. I don't think it was, walk off, quote unquote. I think there was a couple seconds left. Basically a field goal on the last play of the game. I think they had to kick off that. And then this year it's a touchdown with like 3 seconds left or 2 seconds left, Liberty High scores a touchdown. So 2 straight games that have come down to the last play. And we talked about that last week. These teams play really good games. Now it sounds like this game was extremely competitive and not overly, there's a lot of sloppiness, but again, I'm going to cut these teams a little bit of a break with that stuff because you know how hard they're competing in this game. And then also they both went a long time without having practice. But City High, so I talked about this a lot last week, and I've seen them this year, and they're better. They're improved. I really believe that. And now they're sitting here going into the playoffs at 1-3, and they've won 2 games the last, I think, 3 years. And so they don't look like it, but the big thing for them this week, I believe, and I'm not worried about this. I'm truthfully not, because I know the coaches and I know a lot of those kids over there is if they're motivated and they're ready to play, they should be fine this week. And I'm not sliding to Ottumwa, but I think they're better than them. I think they can win. They're at home. I talked last week about how much they like playing there and how much that means to them. But Rob, what you have to win a game if you're City High against Ottumwa, and then you get another chance to play West High.
Yep.
And you've been around this rivalry a lot. And I know I was at the first game and I saw it. And West returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown and never looked back. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was overly competitive or whatever, it wasn't. But if you're a City High kid, and I know a lot of those kids, and you say, hey, we're 1-3, we win a game, we get to go out and play high school football again in a year when in July we didn't know if we were going to get to play. And then we get shut down for 3 weeks. We don't know over something different. We don't know if we're going to be able to play again. And you got to go win on Friday, and you can play at your home field one more time, and then we get a chance to play our biggest rival. Could it have played out better for a 1-3 City High team to get this draw in the playoffs? Because there's only 8 teams playing this weekend. And the way the format worked was you're trying to get it down to 32 teams. You're trying to get it down to 16 games, a 32-team field. So a lot of teams, it wasn't just like the 8 best teams that got buys or the 10 best teams. Basically, everybody gets a bye, almost everybody except for these 8 teams. Ottumwa City, Davenport West and Davenport Central, Sioux City West, and Council Bluffs, Thomas Jefferson, and Cedar Rapids Jefferson and Ames. There's your 4A opening round games. And they all, the winners of that get whoever they get. I mean, it's all set up. I can't remember who they all are. I think Southeast Polk is one of them, et cetera. And then all the other teams.
We can talk about that on Wednesday when we preview a bit more. We'll get more into the brackets.
All those other teams get a bye this week, but they already have their opponents set for next week.
Right.
So you know who you're playing. Everybody's in the same boat. I guess if you're looking at that, you could say, oh, we have to play this. We have to play 2 weeks in a row, et cetera. But in this season, like, you're used to playing 9 straight weeks in high school football. And City High has only played 4. So I really don't think that you're looking at that as kids being like, oh, it stinks we don't have a bye this week, right? I mean, if that's me, and I know a lot of these kids, and they have some really competitive kids, I'm sure they're excited to be able to play this week. And so I think, what I'm saying, Rob, like, in some of these scenarios, you look at it and say, like, oh, like, we would have liked to have had the week off. I think it sets up really good for City High. I mean, that's just me, the way I look at it, but you get a chance to play another game at home that you can win. You win that, you go into that feeling good, and you get a chance to beat. And we just talked about how good West High is, and they are playing at a super high level. But if you're City High, you get another chance to play your arch rival in a game when everybody thinks you're a giant underdog. I mean, I think they're going to love that. So I didn't see the game on Friday. Like you said, sounds like it was a tale of two halves. But I think when I saw the playoff brackets, or they're not brackets. Sorry. When I saw the pods for the playoffs, I thought, that's a good situation for City High to be in. If you're worried about how you're going to come out and play that first round, I'd be a lot less worried about it, knowing that the prize is getting a chance to play a team that they look forward to playing every year. So take care of Ottumwa and see what happens if you're City High, right?
Yeah, you can. I mean, I don't know if you would, classify it as saving your season, but if you win the first week against Ottumwa and then, clean things up and you are able to knock off your rival, I mean, that's what you'll remember. You won't remember the loss to Liberty. You'll remember beating West High. And
right.
I know Garrett Hartwig and the people at West High would never admit this publicly, but they sure as heck would rather play Ottumwa than City High in their first playoff game.
Right. And that game was, look, we don't have to break that game down, and we can do that in a couple of weeks if it ends up happening. But it was an interesting game, and I think you were at these games. That was during the stretch where there was no fans there. Right. So you have a boot game with no fans, and you've seen it with college and pro and everything. It was different. I'm not making excuses. That game was, the score was what it was. I'm not making excuses for City High. Nobody kill me for that. I'm just saying, like, if you're City High and you get a chance to play that, you get a do-over in that game, like, you're going to take it, obviously. And so I think it sets up good for them. And even in the first round, not just they're playing Ottumwa, like, these teams that are playing this week, they're all 1-win teams or winless teams. But just in the sense that when that's the carrot at the end of the stick, for the second round, rather than the trip to, another highly ranked team like West High is, but, rather than the trip to Hempstead, right. You say, hey guys, we win this week, we got a shot at these guys again. I'm sure they would take that. They know those kids. They want to play them again. So I think it sets up good for City High. And for me, it sets up good for me because I would always watch City and West High play in football because it's enjoyable for me to watch teams that I know play each other, right? So I would watch it again.
Yeah, for City, I mean, we're in the City High School District, so I obviously pay attention to them and kind of focus on them a little bit more when I'm looking at things on Saturday. And this is not to take anything away from Liberty or any other team that's beaten City High, but I think City High is its own worst enemy at times, and it needs to stop with the self-inflicted wounds. If it plays cleaner football, I think it has a chance, because I think, like you said the last 2 weeks, Ryan, City High's got talent on the team. It doesn't lack for talent. It just sometimes those mistakes, the talent isn't good enough to overcome the mistakes, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and, I'm not trying to just, again, it was a bad time for them to have to take time off, I think. Right. It was a bad time for everybody, but it's different, for every team. And I don't know what happened during that 3 weeks, but I just think that they've maybe had a harder time coming out of that. And look, Liberty was in the same boat, right? And I certainly want to give them credit. That we're just kind of talking about City High right now, and we'll talk about Liberty in our preview in a couple weeks, because they're going to have a tough matchup, but at Hempstead. But you have to give them a ton of credit for how far Liberty came from when I saw them they won the week before the 3-week break at Jefferson. But man, they scored 7 points in that game, and came out and put up 28 points against against a better City High team. So they made leaps and bounds of improvement. But I think that's the benefit for City High of playing this week is you get another normal week. You practice. I think they bring him in on Saturday mornings, after games to stretch and do all that stuff. But you get another normal week. So they played on Friday. You get your normal week. You play again on Friday again. You get another week of game preparation, get better, and then you get another Friday night with the heartbeat going and the adrenaline going, and you get a play, and not just because of what we talked about where they miss games, but just as a chance to get better. You play somebody else, you get another week, and then you see if you can use that to get those game reps to clean some of that stuff up. Because you said it. I mean, I said it last week. I think that Linn-Mar game is a winnable game for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Linn-Mar had a game, and they hadn't, and that game statistically and everything else looks like it. I mean, it's a couple score game or whatever when they return a onside kick at the last play of the game, but that was a touchdown game. City led in that game, and I think the Liberty game's a winnable game for them. And you lose both, and all of a sudden you're looking at 3-1 instead of the opposite way when you've and I'm sure they're sitting there going, man, look at this play and this play and this play and this play and this play, how far away we are from being 3-1. Yeah. So get a little bit cleaner. And again, see what happens. I like the way it sets up. Now, they got to go out there and they have to do those things, right? You got to not turn it over and take care of some of that business. But